It's raining Russians, and they're all going to waste because the only catchment available is the pavement. Hi, welcome to What's With Worldwide Weekly News with Walt Withers. I'm your host, Walt Withers, and this is WWWWN. Catch even more stories at www.wwn.com/Walt Withers. Russia, a country unrivaled in landmass, and the world-leading manufacturers of Reddit users and unicycles for bears. An unstoppable force that collided with an immovable object in 2022 when it engaged an enemy that simply would not be defeated. The window. That's right, there's been a suspicious spike in the number of Russians tumbling out of windows. The humble window is now considered so deadly that as munitions deplete, troops on the front lines are being armed with glass panes. But it's back home where windows are showing their true treachery, particularly for oligarchs, a term used for powerful, wealthy and politically connected individuals. Comparative Western figures include bouncy, oblivious billionaire Elon Musk and filthy rich socialist charity case Hassan Piker. One might think that achieving such a grandiose position would be a dream for most Russians, but it seems when life in Russia opens a door, a window inevitably follows, making oligarchy almost as dangerous as being a Boeing whistleblower. The police there seem certain there's no connection between all these mysterious deaths, and far be it from me to call into question the infallible record of Russian investigative bureaus. But I think there might be a little more to this. So, what's with Russian windows? Now, as an esteemed modern journalist, I've called in my most trusted source, and once again, it doesn't disappoint, with a list of notable Russians that have died suspiciously between 2022 and 2024. There are some difficult names to pronounce here. Luckily, my Russian is pretty fluent after several viewings of Enemy at the Gates. Some of these cases are quite odd, such as Colonel Vadim Boyko, who police say committed, well, I can't use that word because YouTube and the media in general have decided that the best way to deal with people with such ideation is to make them feel isolated and alone in their plight. Stay stoic, folks. So let's say the police concluded that Boyko was cooking chop suey, with 5 gunshot wounds to the head. An odd choice of ingredients for chop suey, but Russians are seldom known for their stir-fries. Here's another one. Andrei Fomin, who, during a swim, fell ill and drowned. Jeez, that's rapid. I mean, I knew Russia was chilly, but good heavens. Another swimming pool incident. Energy and shipping executive Yuri Voronov was found in his pool with multiple gunshot wounds to the head. Several spent casings were found at the bottom of the pool, and a gun was located nearby. Well, this is textbook chop suey. Yuri, whilst swimming with his gun, clearly shot himself in the head multiple times, then carefully placed the gun besides the pool. Nothing suspicious here. And another, Alexei Avramenko, died suddenly. Now that is concise. And the police have obviously conducted a thorough investigation, as they've not only identified a cause of death, which was dying, but they've also established a time frame, which was suddenly. So again, nothing suspicious here. But this one is strange. Alexander Subbotin reportedly died from a drug-induced heart attack during a shamanic ritual, though critics allege that toad poison was used. Actually, that's not the one I was thinking of. That one's pretty straightforward too. But tonight we're focusing on the oligarchs that died from fall damage. Let's start with Dan Rappaport, a Latvian-American investor and outspoken critic of Vladimir Putin. He died after a fall from his 9th-story high-rise apartment in Washington, D.C. The Examiner, after an autopsy, listed the manner of death as undetermined. Well, this Examiner's standard of proof is higher than the fall. Oh, Dan also went by a pen name, David Chu. Oh. Here's another one. Get it off the screen. Sausage King Pavel Antov fell out of a window of the Hotel Psy International. Another Russian colleague, Vladimir Baidanov, died at the same hotel 2 days prior. It's interesting that both of these deaths happened in India and Rappaport's happened in Washington. So it's not just a case of Russian windows, but Russians and windows all over the world are having a falling out. Marina Yankina was found dead after falling from the 16th floor of a high-rise building. She was the finance director of the Western Military District, one of the 5 districts that encompassed the entirety of the Russian military. The Western District suffered such embarrassing losses during the invasion of Ukraine that before being abolished entirely, its command was changed 4 times in 2022 alone, making it the hottest potato ever recorded in Eastern Europe. Ravel Marganov was an oil executive who issued a statement calling for a quick end to the conflict in Ukraine, describing it as a tragedy and expressed sympathy to its victims. Mate, I get the sentiment, but read the room. On the 1st of September 2022, Marganov was reportedly hospitalized for heart problems and depression. That's a pretty sad way to go, but not really what we're covering tonight. Oh, then he fell out of a window. Well, when you're feeling blue, opening a window and letting some light in is a good idea. But you have to remember, this guy was an oil tycoon. They're pretty slippery. Let the nurse help you, mate. Grigory Kochanov, creative director of IT company Argama and outspoken critic of the war in Ukraine, reportedly fell from his apartment and died whilst officials from the investigative committee executed a search warrant for his apartment. And this is what impresses me so much about Russian investigators. Their response time is so good that they were there before the incident even happened. I looked into it a bit further and found some interesting tidbits in an article by Medusa. Local Telegram channels Nimash and 112 suggested that the search took place in connection with another word I can't say investigation, and that 20 terabytes of you-know-what were discovered in Kochanov's apartment during the search. So I thought, well, the scumbag got caught and couldn't live with the shame. But none of this information came from any authorities. Naturally, the competing media outlets queried the investigative committee that conducted the search for more details on the case. The spokesperson, Yulia Skliarova, was all too happy to oblige, stating, "There's no information for the media." Well, that is odd, because Nimash and 112 seem to have had instantaneous and extensive information of grievous claims. And here I was impressed with the Russian investigators' response time. Nimash and 112's sleuthing prowess is unparalleled. As for the investigative committee, I suppose it's normal to want to compile all of the evidence and make a solid case before addressing the media who have been left out of the loop. But old Yulia goes on to add that it would be useless to query the office in the future, as the answer would remain the same. Jeez. Okay, so the investigative committee are refusing to talk about this ever. What about the police? They say, ask the investigative committee. Well, it's good to have closure. Kristina Baikova, a 28-year-old banking executive. Whoa, what? A banking executive at 28? Is there a picture? Well, she looks the part. Or looked. She fell from her 11th floor apartment. The incident is yet to be clarified. I'm sure it will. Diana Sidorenko was the Belarusian ambassador to Germany. On the 11th of March 2024, Sidorenko was stripped of his post by President Lukashenko. 3 months later, he reportedly fell out of a window and died after being interrogated. Media outlet Zerkalo reported Sidorenko experienced heavy physical stress during the KGB's lie detector tests. It seems no liar can outfox the test of being beaten to death. The Belarusian news outlet Nasha Neva quoted unnamed sources who said that Sidorenko never made it out of polygraphs and interrogations at all, adding further that it is said in Minsk that all career diplomats returning from the EU are now subject to close operational scrutiny by special services. That is to say, the KGB. Now you might be thinking, didn't the KGB disband in 1991? Yes, but Belarus was such big fans of their own little KGB branch that they kept the flame going, like a cover band that plays all your favourite hits, like Die Dissidents Die, Quells All Teen Spirit, Fight the Powerless, Let's Do the Twist of Your Neck, Every Breath You Take, Through a Soaking Wet Rag, The Shape of You in a Bag, Gulag Digger, and Strewn Bodies That I Used to Know. Valentina Bondarenko, a top economist and leading research fellow at the Russian Academy of Sciences in Moscow, died after falling from her apartment window at the age of 82. Emergency services told the media that her death was not of a criminal nature because she had been ill for a long time. With what? Falling out of window disease? I suppose what they're saying is that there's no point investigating the murder of the sick and elderly, as they are already going to die. Which would mean that the only murders worth investigating are of individuals who never die, conveniently lightening caseloads quite a bit. The most recent oligarch death, and unlikely to be the last, was Mikhail Rogachev, who, on the 20th of October 2024, was found dead after falling out of the window of his Moscow apartment building. This brings the tally of notable Russian figures who have died suspiciously to 61 in just over 2 years. So what's going on? First of all, it is possible that all these oligarchs are killing each other. Siblings often squabble. So when Daddy heads out to enjoy a night of ballet at his personal strip club inside his personal palace overlooking his personal beach, a little roughhousing back home might ensue. Like the old adage goes, the apple never falls far from the tree. And since Putin learnt his KGBs not long after his ABCs, it seems likely that his progeny would be familiar with the family trade of treachery. Hell, Putin might even be encouraging it, as one of his favourite books, The Prince by Machiavelli teaches, a shrewd ruler sows discord amongst his own council. Then they will clip each other's wings for you, never growing strong enough to challenge your authority or being able to trust each other enough to unite against it. The chaos that ensues prevents the kingdom from ever reaching its potential greatness, but as someone like Putin might say, what good is a great kingdom ruled by someone else? There is, of course, the possibility that all these oligarchs are cooking chop suey. However, as someone who is voting for an opposing political party will tell you, life ain't as good as it used to be. That's right, living conditions just keep improving the further you go back in time. And given that all available footage of the motherland looks like a reel of film being projected onto a Hessian bag, it's safe to say that life in Russia is rather retro indeed. Even the scientific community is taking notice, hailing Russian decor as an evolutionary marvel not unlike the crocodile, as its design remains unchanged for eons. And those that have visited a website of culture know that one of the most popular categories is Russian amateur, because it combines the radiant beauty of fetal alcohol syndrome with the sepia nostalgia of grandma's living room. Which is fitting, because with how the war in Ukraine is going, the Iron Curtain is now more akin to a crocheted blanket, the kind that Nana makes for an enlisted grandson who will never return. So it seems unlikely that all these Russian officials are just packing it in when Russians have such cozy living conditions. Well, the Russians in Russia anyways. The ones performing special military operations in Ukraine aren't faring too well. Yes, that's still going on. Not only to the dismay of Ukraine, but Russia as well. Now, I have had it said to me that Russia is dragging out the war on purpose, and those are certainly words, and admittedly, I don't understand them well enough to dispute them. But for now, let's run with the assumption that when a country engages in war, they hope to win. Which Russia is yet to do. In fact, they seem to be copping L's from all directions. Their GDP has slumped from 2.3 trillion in 2013 to 1.9 trillion today. Oligarchs are losing billions from sanctions. It is estimated that they have lost 470,000 troops in 2 years. Admittedly, those figures come from Ukraine, and we all tend to exaggerate our KD ratios. And despite making criticism of the war an offence, which can land you a 6-year prison sentence just for making a social media post, authorities are struggling to squash the dissent. Suffice to say, it's getting rather sweaty in the Kremlin, and Daddy doesn't like when people mess with the thermostat. So for disciples of the Judo Jehovah, success is the only offering that might soothe his heat tantrum, which, unfortunately for them, is the only thing that reality refuses to supply. So if the only thing you can lay down at the altar is failure, or God forbid, dissent, expect a hissy fit of nuclear proportions and to be cleaning some upsettian meatballs off the floor. Or, in a more literal sense, your colleagues. Excuse me. What's that? They've already voted. When? Weeks ago. Who won? Again? Good luck, Ukraine. Now that we can see the big picture surrounding all these mysterious deaths, what have we learned? It's clear that a prime suspect stands tall above all others. One that has undermined the stability of Russia itself and upset the balance of the human condition. A scourge that has deluded the people into a toxic dependence, an exchange in which they offer all that they have and in return receive only entropy, delirium, and death. As Dostoevsky paints it, Russia is a stubborn horse being beaten to death by its master. And that master is vodka. They're all clumsy drunks. Good night, folks.